Have you ever stopped to really consider the terrifying concept of hell? I mean, is it purely a myth, maybe a tool to encourage good behavior, or could there actually be physical locations right here on Earth that serve as, you know, connections to such a realm?
That's a really fascinating question, and it's right at the heart of our discussion today. We've been digging into the material you sent over this compelling documentary audio piece, and it focuses on this idea of gates of hell.
It's as hell, right?
Yeah, these tangible places that people across history and in all sorts of cultures have believed are direct entrances to the underworld.
Exactly. So our mission here is to explore these alleged hellmouths, try to understand the historical beliefs that have sort of grown up around them, and maybe see if we can find any consistent patterns in these ideas. Prepare yourself because we're about to take you on a journey to some truly intriguing, maybe a little unsettling locations.
Definitely. We'll be looking at everything from, erupting volcanoes in Iceland
Mm.
to these dark, shadowy caves deep in jungles, even a seemingly endless lake of fire in Africa.
Wow.
And what's really striking is this recurring belief that these very different places could be ancient thresholds, to something beyond our normal experience.
Okay, let's start with this idea of a physical hell. It sounds like in ancient times, it wasn't always just seen as an abstract concept, was it?
Precisely. The documentary really emphasizes that ancient perspective hell wasn't just like a state of mind or some spiritual thing. It was considered a very real physical place, located beneath the Earth's surface.
Redithas.
Yeah. And more than that, it wasn't just one entrance. The idea of 6 hell mouths around the globe acting as actual links between the living world and the realm of the dead,
Yeah.
that was quite prevalent.
6 actual doorways. That paints a pretty dramatic picture. And where were these ominous locations typically thought to be?
Well, what's interesting is how consistently they're linked with harsh, often geographically dramatic spots. Think deserts, active volcanoes, just spewing smoke and fire.
Right, like the really imposing places.
Exactly. Remote islands, cut off from everything, and deep, dark cave systems. These kind of desolate, sometimes dangerous places were often seen as natural boundaries, sort of liminal spaces between our world and something unknown and terrifying.
Speaking of terrifying locations, the documentary kicks off in Nicaragua with a volcano called Mount Masaya, or, as the locals chillingly call it, Boca del Infierno,
The mouth of hell.
the mouth of hell.
Yes, Messiah. Its scale is truly impressive. It's this massive geological feature constantly giving off what's described as this haunting smoke. It's marked its presence for centuries, and that single cross you see at the crater's edge, it really speaks volumes about its history, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And the archaeologist, Elizabeth Bacadano, she actually went into the lava tubes to get closer to the crater. She described it as feeling like entering the very mouth of the earth. Pretty unsettling, even for an experienced explorer, I'd imagine.
Definitely. And remarkably, even today, in the 21st century, the local people still call it the Gates of Hell. That enduring name connects directly back to ancient indigenous beliefs. For them, Messiah wasn't just, a volcano, it was a sacred entrance to the world of the dead. They believed gods lived down in the depths.
And they practiced human sacrifice.
Tragically, yes.
Yeah.
Casting men, women, even children into that fiery crater, trying to appease these powerful beings they believed resided below. It shows this primal need to control nature's unpredictable forces and maybe a fear of divine anger.
That's a really grim picture. And then the Catholic friars show up in the 1500s. It sounds like they just readily accepted this idea that Messiah was hell.
They really did. They drew directly from the imagery in the book of Revelation, the bottomless burning pit, smoke darkening the sun.
Okay.
And they saw a terrifying parallel right there in Messiah. Given their religious framework, they found these connections in their scriptures and were just convinced something demonic was lurking down there.
And one friar, incredibly brave or maybe just reckless, actually went down into the crater, armed with just a wooden cross.
It was an incredibly dangerous thing to do, yeah. And as the documentary points out, whatever we think now, you have to admire their courage confronting what they genuinely believed was the source of, profound evil.
Right.
Inside that huge burning chasm, the friar was absolutely certain he was standing at the threshold of Satan's domain.
And that certainty was rooted deep in the biblical idea of Satan and the fallen angels being cast down into a chasm, right, after rebelling against God. It's like Messiah just perfectly fit that picture they already had.
Precisely. The medieval Christian worldview pretty much placed hell as this vast underground realm ruled by Satan, a place of eternal punishment.
Ah.
So seeing this fiery abyss, a connection was immediate and deeply unsettling for them.
So they put up a cross.
Yeah, erecting that cross at the crater's edge was a powerful symbolic act, claiming the site, asserting spiritual authority over this perceived gateway of evil. And the fact that this cross is apparently still standing 500 years later, it's a potent reminder of those beliefs.
It truly is. But this belief in an underworld, a great below, it wasn't just unique to Nicaragua or the early Christians, was it?
Not at all. The documentary broadens things out here. It mentions Sumerian beliefs in this great below thousands of years ago. The ancient Greeks wrote about a bottomless abyss, too.
Okay.
And that mirrors concepts in the book of Job, which describes the underworld, Sheol, that's the Hebrew term, as a dark pit beneath the earth. This almost universal belief across cultures in a tangible domain of evil under our feet. It's pretty striking.
It's kind of eerie how consistent these descriptions are, even across huge distances and time periods, different names, different places, but this basic idea just keeps popping up.
That's exactly what's fascinating. Despite all the different names, Hell, Hades, Sheol, and the diverse cultures, there are really substantial and unsettling similarities in how these underworlds are imagined.
By the gates.
And as the documentary highlights, just like with Messiah, this concept of gates, actual points of transition, is a recurring, really significant feature. They signify access to these realms.
So these physical hellmouths seem to be more than just weird geological features. They're deeply tangled up with these fundamental beliefs about what happens after we die. And speaking of experiencing the afterlife, the documentary touches on near-death experiences and the chilling visions some people have reported.
Right. So far, we've looked at physical places, but now maybe we should consider these more personal, subjective gateways through near-death experiences.
Okay.
Yes, the idea of people claiming to have actually seen hell adds another layer to all this. The personal story of Mickey Robinson, the skydiver who survived that terrible plane crash back in 1968, it's particularly vivid. Now, interpretations vary, of course, but his description is compelling in this context.
It is. He talks about his spirit leaving his body, this journey into what he felt was a spiritual world, and then this terrifying encounter with this blackness, blacker than the blackest black, a feeling of eternal emptiness, just profound doom.
That visceral description he gives of the void, feeling eternally lost, isolated, and his absolute conviction when he regained consciousness that he had seen the mouth of hell, it's quite powerful.
Yeah.
And the documentary emphasizes Robinson's experience isn't unique. There are historical accounts of similar hellish visions from centuries before. This recurring theme, encountering a void, feelings of utter despair, it might reflect these universal anxieties we have about oblivion.
All right, they mentioned a Spanish monk in the 7th century, an Irish warrior in the 12th, a Polish nun, Fina, in the 1930s, all reporting eerily similar encounters with underworld torments. It does make you wonder about these shared experiences.
It really does. Now let's travel somewhere else, another place believed to be a gate of hell. Actun Tuniquilmucnal Cave in Belize. It's about 400 miles from Masaya. Here, the ancient Maya believed this cave was a direct portal to Xibalba, their underworld, and its name means...
The place of fear.
Aptly named, yes, the place of fear.
And the documentary mentioned that even today, surviving Maya still have this real sense of apprehension about this hellmouth.
That enduring fear really speaks to the lasting power of these ancient beliefs, doesn't it? Dr. Jamie Aw, who spent decades investigating the Xibalba legends, he highlights ancient Mayan references to human sacrifice inside the cave.
Sacrifice again.
Yes. And the Popol Vuh, their sacred text, describes these dangerous chambers waiting for anyone who dared enter the underworld.
It's fascinating that the Maya didn't just see it as spiritual, but as a literal place under their feet, somewhere they'd actually go for important ceremonies.
Exactly. And Dr. Aw's physical journey into the cave sort of mirrors that ancient path. He talks about the very real dangers, deep water, hidden pitfalls, which directly echo how the Mayan underworld is described in their mythology. Treacherous.
And the cave features themselves seem to line up with the myths, right? Like the sharp stalactites and stalagmites, easily interpreted as the House of Knives, designed to test souls going into Xibalba.
Absolutely. And what's striking here is the belief that failing these trials in the Mayan underworld could mean losing your soul permanently, a kind of ultimate damnation. This idea of a dangerous journey, a difficult passage through a labyrinth to reach the afterlife. It's a theme you see again and again in many cultures.
Like paying the ferryman in Greek myths, or crossing dangerous rivers in other stories. Seems the journey to the underworld is rarely straightforward. And then there's that grim discovery inside the cave, the human remains.
Ah, yes. The skeletal remains of a young woman found deep inside Acton Tunicil Muknal. It offers this potentially chilling confirmation of those ancient legends about human sacrifice, suggesting these offerings were made to appease the gods of Xibalba. For those people, the path to the Mayan underworld was indeed their final journey.
This idea of a dangerous passage, it really does seem to be a common thread connecting these different gates of hell. It's not just about finding the door, it's about the trials you face getting through it.
Precisely. The documentary gives more examples. The Greek hero Theseus losing his memory down there, perilous mountains, rivers, gateways described in early Mesopotamian texts, even the false door in ancient Egyptian tombs that was seen as a literal portal, starting a potentially dangerous trip into the afterlife.
And that Egyptian journey was full of its own dangers too, right?
Yeah.
Monsters, demons, traps. It sounds like they even had a guidebook, the Omat, with spells to help navigate.
Yes, it was like a virtual roadmap. It gave the secret names and methods needed to get past the underworld's guardians and monsters. If you couldn't recite the right spells, well, you risked being trapped in limbo forever. This wasn't just symbolic for the Egyptians, it was a real perilous journey.
And it's interesting how even heroes in different myths, Orpheus, a Norse god, even Christ, with the idea of descending into Hades, they all undertake this dangerous journey into the underworld, often to rescue souls. It reinforces this idea of a really challenging passage. But okay, once you actually reach hell, what's waiting for you? The documentary then shifts focus to the tortures themselves.
Right, and this is where the descriptions often get particularly vivid, focusing on torture and suffering that's frequently described as, well, beyond human imagination. It's noticeable, as the documentary points out, how much more detail often goes into describing hell's horrors compared to the glories of heaven.
It's like our fascination with the bad place is somehow stronger. The documentary then looks at the Greek concept of Hades, a literal underground realm of the dead, with hidden entrances supposedly on the Peloponnese coast.
Yes, Hades, the Greek underworld, much like Messiah and Xibalba, had these physical entry points. And the ancient myths describe these huge underground rivers within Hades, each with symbolic, pretty grim names. Acheron, the river of woe, Cocytus, wailing, Phlegethon, fire, and Styx, hate.
Rivers of gloom and despair. Basically ferrying the dead to a pretty bleak existence, a ghostly limbo. Doesn't sound like a great afterlife for most ancient Greeks.
Not really. But beyond those rivers was an even more terrifying place, Tartarus, the deepest part of Hades reserved for the absolute worst offenders, a place of specific, severe punishments.
And these weren't just random tortures, right? The documentary highlights how punishments in Tartarus often mirrored the crimes committed in life. That idea seems to have influenced later views of hell.
Exactly. Eternal suffering tailored to your sins. Examples like being strapped to a wheel of flames forever, or constantly pushing huge boulders uphill only to have them roll down again, or enduring unquenchable thirst and hunger. It paints a truly gruesome picture.
That myth about the guy whose liver gets eaten by vultures every day.
Right, perpetually devoured, illustrating that concept of unending torment.
And this idea of Tartarus, punishment fitting the crime, it clearly connects to the Christian concept of hell as a place of moral judgment, eternal retribution. The documentary even gives examples from other religions, like Islamic texts describing venomous snakes and hotter fires, or Zoroastrian texts with horrific tortures lasting seemingly forever.
It just underscores this widespread idea of an underworld as a place for punitive justice. And while the Christian idea of hell evolved into this elaborate, multi-layered universe of punishment, it's actually a bit surprising that the New Testament itself doesn't give that many detailed descriptions of the tortures.
So where did all those really lurid details come from? The documentary points to early Christian apocryphal texts, like the Apocalypse of Peter, things not included in the official Bible.
Precisely. These texts, written in the early centuries after Christ, kind of filled in the blanks. They presented these terrifying visions, sinners being roasted, blasted by lightning, torn apart by animals. It's been suggested that the fear these vivid descriptions created might have actually encouraged conversion to Christianity.
Makes sense. So the damned aren't suffering alone in hell. There are also demons involved. The documentary mentions that volcanic eruption in Iceland in 2010 and how some medieval folks interpreted it as a cry from hell, confirming biblical warnings about these beings.
Yes, the Christian belief is that, a third of God's angels fell and became demons. They now live in hell and supposedly delight in tormenting lost souls. So hell isn't just for condemned humans, it's also populated by these malevolent entities.
And the distinction is made that demons aren't trapped there like human souls are. They actively try to escape into our world through these hell mouths, like Mount Hekla in Iceland.
That's a crucial point. Biblical texts like Revelation and Mark talk about demons emerging from open gates of hell to cause chaos on earth. And this idea of a porous boundary isn't new either. The ancient Greeks had rituals, like at the Necromantean, specifically to communicate with the dead, often involving blood sacrifice to give the spirits some temporary life force.
It's a pretty unsettling thought that these gates could be two-way streets. The documentary even touches briefly on the Salem witch trials in 17th century America, the Puritan belief that the wilderness was the devil's territory, a potential gateway for demons.
Right. Cotton Mather's warnings, the accusations that alleged witches made pacts with the devil out in the woods, it all underlines this intense fear of demonic influence and the idea that these liminal spaces could be portals from hell into their community.
And at the center of all this fear of hell and demons
Eh,
is the figure of Satan, the embodiment of evil itself.
The documentary connects Satan's rise as such a prominent figure to the historical context of the Romans destroying the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. Early Christians needed a way to understand that catastrophe, framing it as part of a larger cosmic battle between good and evil, with Satan as the ultimate dark force.
Belial, Mastema, Satan, the Prince of Darkness. The documentary notes that belief in Satan as a real, cunning being causing evil in the world that still exists today for many.
Absolutely. The concept of eternal punishment in a literal hell is still a fundamental belief for a lot of people. The documentary even plays audio clips from that radio show, The Sacred Division, discussing a supposed recording of screams from hell found in Siberia. It just highlights this ongoing fascination with finding tangible proof of the afterlife.
And those callers talking about hell as a real place of unending pain. Or it really shows how deeply ingrained the idea is in some belief systems. It seems tied to this fundamental human desire for justice, consequences for actions on Earth.
That longing for cosmic balance is ancient. The documentary mentions the Egyptian final judgment scene on Lady Tahat's coffin, the heart weighed against the feather of truth. Fail, and you get devoured by a monster.
Right.
You see similar ideas in Greek beliefs with King Minos judging the dead, and in Islamic beliefs where the damned fall into a pit of fire.
And then there's Dante's Inferno, probably the most influential and certainly the most lurid vision of hell's torments.
Dante's work from around 1300, yeah. It painted this incredibly detailed, terrifying picture. Hell organized into 9 circles, punishments getting worse for more serious sins. He really emphasized that direct link between sin and punishment. The idea that life choices have eternal consequences, and the torture in his hell is specifically tailored to those choices.
It's such a powerful, disturbing image, this meticulously structured realm of eternal suffering. But then the documentary offers a different angle with St. Patrick's Purgatory in Ireland, a possible way to actually avoid hell.
Yes, Lough Derg. It's this small island in Ireland, a pilgrimage site for centuries. There's a 1,000-year-old legend that it's a gateway, not directly to hell, but to a place for purifying souls, a purgatory.
And thousands of Catholics still go there every year, fasting, staying awake, symbolically locking themselves in.
That's right, engaging in these acts of penance and renunciation. The legend says St. Patrick himself got visions of the underworld in a cave on the island as proof for the pagans he was trying to convert. And these visions supposedly showed purgatory as this upper chamber of hell for cleansing souls.
And people used to go into the cave hoping for visions themselves.
Yes, there are historical accounts of pilgrims doing just that. The belief persists that pilgrimage to St. Patrick's Purgatory can help purify your soul, maybe even help you avoid the deeper parts of hell. There's even a tradition about visiting 3 times for full effect.
So from terrifying descents to paths for redemption, the idea of these hellmouths is definitely complex. And the final location the documentary explores is the Erta Ale volcano in Ethiopia, described as one of Earth's harshest places, the hellhole of creation.
Yeah, Erta Ale, its extreme conditions, the local legends linking it to the origin of the universe, evil spirits. It definitely has an ominous feel. The documentary asks, could this fiery place lead to the true source of hell's power?
Explorer George Coronis went there, trekking through the Danakil Desert, one of the hottest places on Earth. That sounds intense.
Incredibly intense. And Erta Ale is right on a tectonic rift, which creates this dangerous window into the planet's interior. It's quite remarkable.
Seeing that lava lake
Yeah.
That boiling cauldron, 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, you can absolutely see why people historically link volcanoes with a fiery underworld.
Definitely. Kurani's descent into the crater, even wearing a heat suit, it just vividly brings those ancient descriptions of hell to life. The fire, the smell of sulfur dioxide, brimstone.
It really connects the science, Earth's molten core, with these ancient beliefs about a fiery realm right under our feet. And the documentary wraps up by bringing it all back to one central, powerful human experience, the enduring power of fear.
That's exactly it. Whether it's fear of the unknown after death, fear of judgment, fear of eternal suffering, fear is the fundamental emotion linking all these interpretations, all these so-called gates of hell. The similarities across cultures probably reflect these shared primal human anxieties about death, about consequences.
Ultimately, it comes down to those basic questions, doesn't it? What happens when we die? Will we be held accountable for how we lived? And even with all our modern science, the belief in hell persists, maybe fueled by that deep need for justice, for good to ultimately win over evil.
Exactly. These hellmouths, whether you see them as literal portals or just powerful metaphors, they continue to hold this really significant, compelling place in our collective imagination.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into these different hell mouths and the incredibly rich tapestry of beliefs around them, a few key things stand out. This historical belief in actual physical gateways to the underworld, the really remarkable consistency of themes across cultures, the dangerous journeys, the realms of torment, and just the undeniable enduring power these ideas have had on human thought.
And that leads us to a final thought for you to consider. Thinking about all these varied locations and interpretations we've discussed, what does this persistent human fascination with hell really tell us about ourselves? About our deepest anxieties regarding mortality, regarding justice? Is hell a literal place waiting for some? A metaphor for our own inner demons? Or maybe, a social construct designed to keep us in line? It's certainly a profound question to keep mulling over.
We definitely encourage you to keep exploring these fascinating questions and perhaps even revisit some of your own beliefs about what might lie beyond this earthly life.